everyone, and welcome to Giant Leaps for Brandkind. We have had a heck of a start. So, I launched the podcast officially at the beginning of April, and I've just had an incredible response since then. I've been able to talk with such cool guests. We've had the head of creative at DocuSign walk through that rebrand. We've had two separate analytics experts, CEOs of analytics and metrics agencies, measurement agencies, talk about measurement and brand, which is always a really hot topic. I've had experts in visuals and creative and other experts in storytelling and copy kind of rap with me and talk about the process and really break it down and explain it for everyone. And it's just been an incredible ride. I'm really appreciative to everyone who's tuning in, giving me feedback, getting involved, and of course, my interviewees. Just so appreciative of you guys. So today I thought I'd do something a little bit different, a little bit more mellow. I had a couple of articles recently published in Forbes for the Forbes Communications Council. And they dealt with a subject that I get a lot of questions about. And it's something that I handle with my mini agency. Right now, we're called Nat Lennox. We are actually rebranding ourselves to the Lennox Agency. And I am going to talk through that a little bit in the future. But we specialize in doing brands and brand marketing for businesses, and especially those earlier stage businesses that are not ready necessarily to hire a CMO, but need some direction and need to get off on the right foot. We also substitute a lot when tech companies, especially, but any sort of business, B2B especially, has had kind of like a downturn, or they have either put hiring on hold or they have unfortunately gone through a layoff or whatever, but still need creative services, social media, that kind of thing. We help patch in some of those services so that they can keep things going on a fractional level while they are, restructuring or whatever. So we've been doing a lot of that stuff. And one of the things that I get asked all the time is, what should I do with my social media and how should I measure the value, or how should I think about the value that social media is bringing to my business? And this especially is something that startups ask me. I have been working with B2B startups for the past 6 years, I think, something like that. And I have explained this again and again to different founders. So I thought I would put together a little, podcast where I just talked about the value that social media can bring to a B2B startup. And I'm going to use the two articles I wrote for the Forbes Communications Council as a base. So if you would like to go visit them, you can see them under my profile, Nat Lennox at the Forbes Communications Council. If you look up Nat Lennox Forbes, you will find my page and be able to click on all of my articles and things that I've written or contributed to for Forbes. But if you just want an overview, you can sit back and listen in the car during your commute, while folding laundry, whatever you're doing in your life. Hopefully this gives you another way to absorb the content. So talking about fueling startup growth. So typically if you have just launched a startup, or you've recently launched a startup, or maybe you've got a 6-year-old startup that's kind of hitting an inflection point. Maybe you're at Series B, whatever it is, and now you're like, okay, we really need to invest a lot more in the go-to-market side of the business. We need to kind of maximize or optimize that side of the business so that we can really generate that revenue, meet those next revenue goals, so we can get to our Series C or whatever it is, or unlock the next stage of funding. So if you're at that point and you're wondering, okay, I've been told I should be posting on LinkedIn. I've been told I should be maybe opening an X account, or opening a company X account, or whatever it is, or even a TikTok by my board of directors. And we should be doing this, and they're asking me about that and that kind of thing. Social media is very visible. So a lot of founders and CEOs will be asked about it. Why aren't you guys doing this? Or why aren't you on this platform? And it's easy for anyone to see the effort that you are putting in or not putting in there, right? Including your board of directors, including your investors, whatever it is. The CEOs and C-suiters, founders that I work with are in turn always asking me, should we be doing this? What are the goals of doing this? How much should we invest in this? That kind of thing. And I give them some advice. So, my first piece of advice is before going into any sort of social media investment, always know what you want out of it, right? So, is your goal to raise brand awareness to the level that it is easy for you to go after your next round of funding? So by the time you go after your Series C, everybody is just like chomping on the bit to hand you their dollars because they understand everything about your company, your culture, your product, what you're doing. And they just cannot wait to become a part of your company's legacy or own a piece of your company, right? Is your goal to um, get in front of as many customers as possible and create a number of touch points so that you are creating that brand awareness with them, getting product information in front of them, getting messages in front of them so that you can align yourself with their values and their innermost thoughts and psychology so that you're the first company that they think of when they need your services? Is that your goal? What are you trying to do here? And so I've put together this kind of handy list of things that social media can do for a B2B business. As you listen to this list, maybe think about what your business objectives are. Under each, benefit of social media for B2B businesses, I have put together like a short list of tips and tricks for getting that part started, right? Or executing that part of the program. So hopefully this is helpful. Now, why did I do this? So right now there's a stat out there around 90% of B2B marketers are trying to use social media to elevate their brands. Um, but many of them are having a hard time explaining the legitimacy of social media as a B2B marketing tool, right? Like they're getting asked, okay, what's the ROI of this? How do we measure success? And they're kind of stumbling. A lot of people are stumbling in understanding the value that it brings the business. I Fun story, I was working with a founder a few months ago as a consultant, and I started to get to the portion of our marketing plan where I was recommending that we put together a comprehensive social media strategy. And his response to me was, "Oh, how hard is it to post on LinkedIn?" That was kind of the response that he gave me. And at that point, I knew that I was going to need to spend a lot of time educating him on, you know, what social media could do for his business when done right and how we should think about it as a business, right? How he should be thinking about it. Because, these types of flippant responses still exist, especially in the startup space with new founders that have never grown businesses in the past. They'll say things like, oh, can't we get an intern to do it? Or can't we hire someone cheap on, and then they name their favorite freelancer platform just to handle it for us. And that is really short-sighted thinking because if you are going to half-ass something, why are you doing it at all? if you're doing something just because you think you quote unquote should be doing it, but not actually using it as a tool for your business, um, there's no point. So it's basically like telling your CFO, I need you to make a spreadsheet. And you're not saying, I need you to calculate our P&L for this period of time. You're saying, oh, just make a spreadsheet. Everybody's making spreadsheets. We should be making a spreadsheet. Well, they could make a spreadsheet on ranking their favorite, romance novels of all time. It's a spreadsheet. They did what you told them to do, like you really need to understand, what are you engaging in here with this tool, social media, and why are you creating it? Why are you putting the effort into it? And what do you want to get out of it as a business? So here's how I advise that CEOs and founders think about it. So, what you can do is you can use it to generate revenue or accelerate success, or a combination of both. Those are the two categories that I think that social media utility falls into. The generating revenue is like kind of one side of it. And then accelerating success, generating revenue is self-explanatory, but accelerating success deals with all of the other aspects of your business that go into helping your business thrive. So, starting with generating revenue, let's dive in there. So, the first thing that social media can do if you are a B2B startup or B2C startup is to generate inbound demand for your product. So, what we know right now is that the average cold call success, that means someone cold calling a customer and it's actually turning into a paying account, is hovers around 2%. So, if you think about your revenue goals, think about only 2% at the high end of those cold calls from your sales team actually leading to revenue. How many cold calls would you have to make in order to meet your revenue goals? Like, I don't know if there are enough, you know, salespeople in the world to put in all the cold calls that you'd need for every business to generate the ARR that they need to succeed. Lead gen forms. So, the very classic, here is here's you know, advertisement for our product. Here is the lead gen form. Fill this out and we'll give you a, ping about our product. That in and of itself as a tactic only has a conversion rate of 3%. So everybody thinks, oh, it's all about the lead gen form. It's all about offering them something, blah, blah, blah. You've got 3% conversion rate. So it only hovers a little bit above, tiny bit above the cold call success rate. So what are we going to do? We are going to generate inbound demand. So what is demand generation? So basically, demand generation is a strategy whereby you woo customers through free, high quality content that enriches their lives in some way, right? So you are basically putting things out there into the world that you have invested in, a whole suite of media, and you are then kind of creating this environment, this journey back to your purchasing spot, right? So your website, whatever your store, wherever your store is housed, something where a place where they can learn about your product and either drive themselves through the funnel in order to get closer to conversion or convert right away, depending on probably the nature of your product and the dollar amount that they would be spending and that kind of thing. So basically, what happens is you are going to create an entire ecosystem for your demand generation machine. You are going to create a series of touch points for your potential customer to discover your company, enrich themselves through the content that you're providing, enjoy the experience with your brand, and you're going to form relationships with them before they ever speak to a salesperson. So, what this takes is you need to invest. And this is the kicker because a lot of times you need to invest for a period of time before ever seeing that return on investment. So you need to have patience. I guess that would be step one, is have a little bit of patience and understand the production calendar and process, and then the amplification process, and put realistic goals to measuring your return on investment. And understand that that will be an arc, it will be a process, and it will compound as you move forward, which I think is key. These things that we put out there in the world, they don't just disappear, right? Those are always touch points that live in the digital ecosystem, and they then compound so people can experience them over and over. And as you add to the ecosystem more and more, it becomes a richer ecosystem that reaches more potential customers. So, to get started, first of all, you will need to make sure that you are investing in your content machine, right? So, that means that you have some sort of brand put together. You could be starting to create content after you've figured out the very basics of your brand. So, obviously, you're going to have some sort of idea of what your personality and character and voice and that kind of thing is, and your basic visuals. You could still be working on your brand as you start to produce that content. If you are under a time constraint for some reason and you need to start getting things out there right away, you can go ahead and start to work in the two in tandem once you have the very basics out there. I recommend that you have a fully fledged brand in place if you can. If you can do that, then it is ideal to go through the branding process, really dig into the psychological aspects of your brand, understand the emotional connections and triggers between your customer and your company, all of that stuff before diving into creating this demand gen ecosystem, right? So, you know, another great tip is to think about joining communities full of potential customers and just listening, right? So if you haven't gone through that brand process or you're in the midst of the branding process, but you want to get things out there, you will understand what people care about by listening well. Listen, listen, listen. So you can join communities where you know that your customer is existing online or even in real life, and kind of listen to the topics, the hurdles, the big problems, the things that they need to solve, the things that are kind of keeping them up at night. And rather than just thinking, how can I sell them something to take care of this problem? Also think, is there anything that I could provide that is adjacent to my product or lives in the same area to help solve other problems for my customer? Is there a piece of content? Is there something going on that I can help them fix? A really good example of this, I was doing content and creating a brand marketing ecosystem for an invoicing and billing app a few years ago. And we, of course, were selling an invoicing product, right? We were saying, we want you to be a subscriber to our invoicing product. And that way you are able to invoice your client anytime, anywhere from your smartphone. It's super easy. We have low fees, blah, blah, blah. That was our product. That was our offering, right? At the time. And instead of saying, we're just going to create content all about invoicing and we're going to create content all about, how to invoice better, how to be, on top of your invoices, how to track your invoices. Yes, of course, we created that content on the product side and made sure that we had all of the information that we possibly could on our website about our product in a way that was easy to digest and engaging and interactive. That was step one. Step two was we looked at the life of the business owner and we said, what other things can we help them with that have nothing to do with the product that we have to sell? Can we help them with potential funding? Like teach them how to seek investors for their business? Could we help them figure out how to do their taxes? Right? Like all of these other things that we weren't actually selling to them, but we put together content, tools, and resources to help them solve those problems. And they discovered our brand in that way or reconnected with our brand in that way, and then decided to consider us or engage in our free trial or whatever it was because we were providing this content to make their life better. So that is the best way that I can describe really listening to and understanding your customer in order to use what they're telling you to create this demand gen ecosystem that puts them and their needs first. Another tip is to make sure that you're building out things that are engagement friendly at any time that you can, right? So things that move, things that, ask people for their opinions, just something that engages them in a different way and gets their attention in a different way. It's really easy to have a cool logo. It's really easy to have like a cool looking color palette. It's harder to actually, put together things that spark someone's interest on a regular basis and allow them to engage and spark their own creativity. An example of this is one of the pieces of content that we provided when I was helping a data provider was we created these really cool downloadable infographics about the industry that they worked in. And it was neat because this was like groundbreaking information that we could provide because of our product. Our product collected data on satellites in low Earth orbit. And we were able to turn that satellite data into insights that were interesting to anyone, how was the number of machines orbiting our Earth in low Earth orbit? Like, how is that number growing every year? What does that growth look like? Who launched what this year? That kind of thing. Like that's really cool for anybody to digest. Like everybody, this kind of a hot topic, and everybody wants to know like what's going on with SpaceX and with foreign entities launching things into space and blah, blah, blah. So we would turn these into infographics that were really visually appealing that anybody could download. Of course, it had our brand stamp on it, but anybody you could actually use them in your own presentations if you wanted to. If someone needed to sell an idea internally or was working on something else, they could use our graphics in their own presentations. And of course, they had our branded stamp on it. So every single time that one of our potential customers was using our graphics, they also were proliferating our visual brand, whether or not they realized it. And also we created like cool things like limited edition posters out of these neat graphics that people could hang up in their office and things like that. And we gave them away at conferences and stuff. So our potential customer base was just surrounded by our brand. So those engaging touch points are key to demand generation, something that's different, something that's quality, something that looks very well thought out. Another tip that I'll give you is to make sure that you have a rich product education suite on the back end. So if you have not put this beautiful self-serve product education suite together on your website, so that when customers are drawn in from other sources and land on your website, they can then kind of navigate through your website on their own, learn about your product, learn about who you are, learn all of these other things. If you haven't invested in that first, then you're going to drive people to your website through this content and then not maximize their experience while they're there and maximize your impact on them while they're there. So you want to make sure that you're investing in that stuff first and maybe in tandem while you're starting to build your demand gen ecosystem. The last tip I'll give you on that is to make sure that you are sharing unique resources and tools that do not sound like sales pitches. If every single piece of content that you create sounds like a sales pitch for your product, people will disengage immediately.
You want to buy this Buick Centurion, huh? Good choice. Smart man, you got good taste. I'll tell you something a lot of people don't have these days. Nice to see somebody finally walk on this lot who knows a good car when he sees one, I'll tell you.
Everyone is sophisticated now, right? Your target audience, whether it is B2B or B2C, they understand that they're being marketed to. Everyone has seen marketing material at some point and understand that they are being fed an experience to some degree. So if you sound like a used car salesman, you are probably not going to engage with your customer in any real way. And they're just going to think like, oh, this person's trying to sell me something. I'm disengaging, rather than this person's trying to help me. I want to engage. And actually I'm thinking well of that brand now because they helped me without asking for anything in return. Okay, so that is demand generation. I have a lot more on this. I have more blogs and resources out there. Feel free to click on some of my other articles on the Forbes Communications Council or reach out to me. I have a whole YouTube channel and, of course, this podcast where I tried to share more on this type of topic. So there's a lot more to learn from me and other marketers out there in the ecosystem. So feel free to reach out if you'd like to learn more. Okay, the next business benefit, social media can actually shorten your sales cycle. Why? Why is it shortening your sales cycle? So there is this rule cognitive psychologist George Miller came up with back in the 30s called the marketing rule of 7. And he theorized at that time that a potential customer needs to have an average of 7 engagements with a company before they even consider taking action. What does that mean? That means that in order to warm your customer up rather to your company and get them ready to engage with you, actually fill out a form to give their information or to chat to sales, to do whatever it is, you need to have at least 7 interactions with that potential customer, 7 experiences or touch points where they are aware of your brand, see some sort of message that resonates with them, etc. So think about that in terms of dollars and cents. If your sales team has to make contact 7 times before they ever get a customer to take action or consider your company, it's going to A, be very costly, and two, likely not be effective, because that means that your sales team would be cold calling or reaching out or kind of pushing towards that customer 7 times. That's a lot, right? And think about the amount of customers that you're pursuing. Social media can actually accelerate this process by doing a lot of the legwork for you. So if you're creating these touch points and you're getting them in front of the right people digitally, you are starting to chip away at those 7 interactions. If you hold that up as your standard, you're starting to chip away at that. So by the time your sales team is talking to that person, they're already completely aware of your company, your offer, hopefully what you stand for and what you sell, right? So they're warmed up by the time they ever speak to sales. And therefore, your sales cycle from initial conversation to the actual contract signing should be much, much shorter. There are less questions, there's less ambiguity, and you are wasting less of the salesperson's time by pre-educating your customer. So, what are tips for this? The first and most important tip is to invest in developing quality proprietary resources. So, make sure that you are not skimping on the resources that you're investing in to share on social media. All of that creative matters. The content matters, the tone of voice matters, the copy, making sure you are offering things in a multitude of forms. So, maybe some sort of audio, maybe some sort of visual advertisement, maybe some sort of behind the scenes interview video, whatever it is, like invest in quality. And then make sure that you are offering all of these resources in an ungated form, or many resources in an ungated form, so that you can then reap the value of having a massive reach with your ecosystem. So you're getting your company in front of as many leads as possible and creating that brand awareness. If you gate everything and no one can see anything, and you're asking for an email for every single touch point, then you're kind of defeating the purpose, because people are not going to go through the process of putting in their email a gazillion times. They want to see things a number of times before ever giving you any sort of contact information. Um, the next tip that I have is to train your sales team on social media best practices. So make sure you're putting in the time. Like, don't assume that every salesperson that you've hired has best practices in mind when they're using social media. Maybe they've taught themselves how to use social media for sales outreach and communications. Maybe they've never had formal training. Maybe things have just changed a lot since the last time that they had formal training. For instance, I remember a time when LinkedIn cut and paste outbound messages were really popular and still worked. And now there's a ton of people wasting a bunch of time with these cut and paste outbound messages and getting no response at all. So, I think that you can do a lot of good by just training your sales team, maybe once a year even, in the latest and greatest best practices on whatever platforms they're using, especially LinkedIn. Um, the next benefit of social media for a B2B business for generating revenue is that social media is actually a tool that can help you decrease churn. So, if you think about this holistically, the rich brand experience that you're creating on social media for your potential customer also trickles into your current customer, right? So, surrounding your current customer with these tools and resources and beautiful brand experiences, that will help endear and solidify that relationship. And therefore, your current customer is far less likely to churn. I mean, obviously, if your product isn't holding up, if your product's breaking, blah, 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 that's not something that social media or brand experience can fix. But if your product is holding up, but maybe competitors are creeping into the space and stealing market share, but your brand has an amazing experience online and provides all these extra resources digitally, that can be the pin that keeps your customer there and keeps them from churning. You can basically set up an entire customer success and service team through social media so that people can reach out to your company on the social platforms that they're already using on a day-to-day basis, and you can deepen relationships that way. If you want to take it even further and you have the resources to support it, you could even launch VIP social communities where customers can post questions and connect with each other. The one thing that I will warn is that these communities take a long time to build, grow, keep active, moderate, get ambassadors into that kind of thing. So it is a longer play. But for instance, if you're creating a new SaaS tool and it's kind of changing the way that people look at a specific function, and you can have classes and resources or whatever around that tool and create a community where customers can help each other out and that kind of thing, that could be exceptionally valuable. The other tips that I will recommend is that you need to offer a variety of media. So make sure that every single person who has a different type of learning ability is able to connect with your content, right, through social media. So make sure that you've got video, illustration, written work, audio, even you've people, they're all different types of learners out there, and you want to make sure that you're appealing to as many people as possible. So make sure that you're choosing the ones that you can do well, because again, quality reigns supreme. But offer at least a couple of different types of media within your social media ecosystem so that you can connect with people who find different things valuable. Some people like to watch videos, some people don't have time to do that, but they'll listen to audio all day long. Make sure that you are diversifying so that you're connecting with the max amount of people. Um, Nominating brand ambassadors, if you do have, social media accounts going and you've got like a lot of activity within a certain community, actually nominating and engaging brand ambassadors it's a really powerful way to get into communities and get them kind of excited about your brand. And then making sure that you're repurposing your demand generation content into things that your customer communities will enjoy, and maybe even adding a little bit of extra, just for VIP customers. Like, here's a webinar that isn't available to everyone, but it is available to our customers, right? Like those kinds of things that make your customer feel like a VIP on social media, deepen relationships, and make, that emotional connection to your brand even stronger. Okay, so I've talked a lot about how to generate revenue by attracting new customers, shortening your sales cycle, and decreasing your churn through social media. That's awesome. So, what else can social media do to attract success to your business, right? So, let's think about some other things. Sometimes they are called soft value things, right? Some softer effects of social media. I would argue that term because I think soft is used often as a term to kind of degrade the value of a benefit or feature, and I truly believe that these things matter just as much to your business's future success as everything that I've mentioned before, and arguably just as much as creating a great product. So, let's talk about some of those other things that social media does for you. So, number one, in attracting success in other ways beyond revenue, is to attract top tier talent to your organization. So, your organization is only as strong as its people. And especially for startups, it's really hard to compete for this top talent, right? Because you've got big tech companies that can throw top salaries and lush perks at these prospective employees, and it's really cool on your resume to say X Google or X this or X that. And so you are going to have to compete if you're a smaller tech company, lesser known, or a startup or something like that. And one way to make sure that you're pushing your company in the right direction, rather, is to make sure that your social media game is on point. How do you do that? This might surprise you. So, beyond the basics, one of the things that are one of the aspects that your potential candidates are considering that you might not realize is they're looking at how you're treating your current team. Um, so they're asking other people within your organization, do you love working there? They're asking people who have left your organization, why did you leave? Could you tell me about your experience? That is happening all the time. They're also looking on social media to see how your current team members are treated from a digital perspective. So, are you celebrating your current team members' wins? Are you tagging them by name and showing genuine gratitude for their efforts on LinkedIn? Are you engaging with and liking your employees' posts? Are you supporting their thoughts and opinions? Are you actually treating people who have left your company for other opportunities? Are you treating those people with kindness? Are you wishing them well at their next opportunity? Are you staying in touch? Is the CEO, I have an exemplary CEO. He is currently at Reputation. His name's Joe Burton. He's incredible. I worked for him at Telesign under his CMO, Christy Milani, over at Telesign. And he is an incredible mentor to people, even far after they've worked for him. He builds these great relationships and he helps people along in their careers at any point. He's so open to everyone. And, you know, that shows on his social media. I see his posts and I engage with his posts, and he's openly reached out to me and been, said things like, reach out to me anytime if you ever need anything. And he means it, right? So people see that stuff. And your potential candidates are going to see it. They're going to make a judgment call about what it's like to work at your business. And, for better or worse, maybe if this is something that you've neglected, they'll say, well, why is the CEO so kind of cold and unreachable? Why does everything seem kind of canned that person is posting? And then if they have another job offer where the CEO seems very warm and open, they're probably going to go to the company culture that looks like a better fit for them, right? So making sure that you're treating your current employees well on social platforms is really, really important. It's very visible. It's something that everyone can kind of have access to. So make sure that that's happening. The second benefit that can help you accelerate success is by generating interest from the press. So, something that founders often don't think about and C-suiters might not think about is the fact that journalists are constantly kind of looking at social media accounts for stories, and sources. So say something is happening in national security, well, they're going to go and look for what is the hottest cybersecurity company right now, and who can I talk to, what experts can I get to weigh in on this topic for this piece. And so if your social media accounts are vibrant, they're constantly being updated, they're rich, they're full of resources, they're full of articles and touch points and things like that, journalists are more likely to look to you and say, hey, this is so and so from Bloomberg. Do you have someone who can speak on this topic? They will reach out to your PR team and they will ask for input. And then all of a sudden, your company is in Bloomberg, right? So the press is always watching. They're always looking for industry experts. They are looking for people who are actively engaged in conversation and industry conversation and seem like the thought leaders in their space. And they are reaching out to companies and individuals in order to have sources for their pieces. So that's another way that social media can really help accelerate business success by earning press for your company. The last thing that I'll say, and this is something that I started to get into at the beginning of the podcast, is that another benefit of doing social media right is to make fundraising fast and easy. So, we're all emotional creatures, and venture capitalists, they want to invest in winning businesses that enhance their current portfolio, of course, but also they want to invest in companies that look good from a reputational perspective. That excite them, right? That seem to be rising fast, that are grabbing headlines, that have fresh ideas. So if you're putting yourself out there on social media and creating a really strong brand, by the time you go to raise funds, it should be an easy process because everybody's always already aware of your company and your startup within the space that you're working in. And they're coming to you and saying, hey, can we get in on this? So, making time to, by way of tips, what I'd say is take time to build out both your company's brand online and also your founders and senior leadership team members, individual social presences. All of this will matter when it comes to fundraising. Make sure that the voices are professionally crafted and sound, top of their class, if you will. Make sure that everyone seems very engaged in your company and your brand. And, make sure that your company page and your senior leadership team members' pages, especially on LinkedIn, are connected to the relevant VCs within your area to increase that visibility. This particular goal will be easy to measure because either when you go to raise funds, either it will be easy or it won't be. And if it's not this time, then you have plenty of time to elevate your presence on social media before your next round of funding. So make sure that you're investing there in the meantime. Okay, I hope that this was beneficial. I hope that the B2B startups out there and even B2C startups got something from this list of tips and tricks and the goals for social media for your business. And we will be back next week with an interview podcast again. But I hope you guys all enjoyed this little timeout, just unfiltered, me to the mic time talking about social media. And if you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out to me. You can find my team, my portfolio, and more information about my team and what we do at nattyNatLennox.com. And you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am Nat Lennox. Okay, thank you so much. I will talk to you next week. Bye. You've just listened to an episode of Giant Leaps for Brandkind. This is the podcast where I talk to business and thought leaders around the globe about growing businesses through the power of brand. If you want to support this effort, giving me a rating or review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or Audible helps so much. And of course, if you're interested in marketing or brand support, you can find my contact information at nattynatlennox.com. That's NATINATLENNOX.com. Cheers.